Hello, I'm Stuart Squires. I'm from Comma Group, which is part of Amplify, and I'm going to talk today about being mature, which is a subject that many people who know me would say I'm far from qualified to talk about being mature. But let's see how it goes. We all remember being a child and wanting to be older, doing things that the older kids did, or even better, doing things that the adults did. But when you get there, when you are the older kid, when you are the adult, it's never as exciting as you originally thought it would be. That's not to say that being more mature is a bad thing, especially when there are so many different ways of measuring maturity. It's not just being old that makes you mature. If being old was the key success indicator, then we'd still all be getting our movies from Blockbuster. And that begs the questions: what is maturity? And what's the relationship between maturity and success? And these are particularly challenging questions when we're thinking about data and when we're talking about data and data maturity. So let's have a real think about data maturity and how it is measured. Firstly, why do we need to know how mature we are? Is it to see how well we're performing? Is it to find a level of maturity that we want to aspire to? Is it to understand the difference between the two of those? How we're performing now, how we want to perform in the future, and measuring the gap between? Is it just to compare ourselves with our friends? By the way, you'll probably notice as I go through this, I'm a little bit addicted to running, and there will be more running analogies as we go through. I'm not going to apologize for that. So how do you do it? And I don't mean run. I mean, how do you measure maturity? Well, there are lots of frameworks out there. Lots of organizations have got their own marking schemes, if you like, that you can use to help determine your data maturity. And all have got a slightly different focus. And it's not just limited to those organizations that are on the slide there. There are many. This is just a small subset of them. And yes, historically, Comma and Amplify, we have our own slightly different schemes that we're bringing together. Now we are part of one group. And the fact that there are these differences in the marking schemes and nobody can agree what maturity really truly is, that in itself points to the fact that this isn't an exact science. But the methods they use are quite similar. So you'll be looking at the completion of questionnaires. So big spreadsheets or big survey monkeys where you're answering questions about your enterprise behaviors. There'll be a more deep dive where you have interviews with some of your key people and some of your people at every level of the organization to understand what they do. There'll be critical reviews of documentation that you have and artifacts that may or may not exist. Some frameworks even go down to the level of profiling actual data. So looking at the results of any governance, any transformation by looking at the data as the final product. And as the process is fairly common, then you'd probably expect that what you get from an assessment, you get from that process to be fairly common. And to be honest, it is. So what do you get? So there will always be a framework of levels. So that are, as it says on the slide, progression stages in data management. And it's how mature do you want to be? Where do you want to be on this scale? And we'll come back to where you want to be versus where you need to be later on. To increase your maturity to a Jeff Bezos level of data maturity, then there's more than likely going to be a cost. but the rewards can be large for that cost. And I'm not saying that if you sort out all of your data challenges, you get to go to space. And I'm not saying that going into space in a rocket that's got a questionable shape is the most mature thing to do either. What I am saying is that maturity doesn't just happen. You have to invest time, you have to invest money, you've got to invest passion and passionate people. And this is one of the ways that maturity is not like age. It's not how old you are. Unfortunately, getting old does just happen. Becoming mature does not. It takes those investments. So the next stage of the what is there will always be a model. This is the Amplify data strategy model. They're all similar, but all different, but they will have big topics that will outline the capabilities, the business capabilities. And those big topics will be broken down into more focused capability topics. And the Amplify wheel on the screen, you can see the big cheeses of business, process, operations, data, tech, and governance. And all of those are broken down into smaller chunks. And around the outside, there's the wrapper of strategy, readiness, optimization, and change, which pervade all the way through all of those cheeses. Getting hungry now. Then you go to the next level down. And you may notice that I've changed model. So this is the DCAM model at this level of detail. And very quickly, this becomes very detailed. All of these models become very detailed very quickly. And a few of you may already be checking your emails. And yeah, I can see you, the man with the glasses sitting on your sofa. I mean you. But this level of detail is one of the major challenges. Not only does it take time and effort and money to improve your level, it takes time, effort, money, a lot of diligence, and potentially a lot of boring audit activities to find out how mature, just to find out how mature you actually are, just to get that starting point. But once you've done that, you can have a beautiful set of artifacts, be them scorecards, data quality scorecards, business glossary structures, data policy templates, etc. Things that you don't have in the business now, or you may not have in the business now. You're looking at the next level up and going, well, the next level up, they have these sorts of things. And here's some templates for those. Let's start using them. Let's start using these processes. And they act as accelerators to you leveling up. So let's stop people from checking their email. Let's do a little activity, a little bit of interactiveness. So knowing that all of the frameworks are slightly different, let's pick an arbitrary framework, one that's got a desired and known business outcome. And that is the Squires-ometer. How can something simultaneously be so egotistical on my part and also show so much desperation for friends? Quite simply, what we're going to do, as I step through the next slides, just give yourself a basic 1 to 5 rating on each of them. Are you ready? Excellent. So these are my dogs. So Brew is the Fox Red Labrador pup, and Poppy is the Hungarian Vizsla. They're cool. I like them a lot. How much do you like dogs? 1 to 5, easiest quiz you'll do all day. Next question. Yeah, I know nothing will beat the original trilogy. And yes, even the original trilogy weren't technically or artistically brilliant films, but I love them. How much do you love Star Wars? 1 to 5. And for the record, Rogue One is by far the best. No arguments there. Next one. So this is a view of Snowdonia, which are the biggest hills that are my biggest hills to my house. And I don't get out in them as much as I should do, but that's not the question here. It's how much would you like to? How much do you like being outdoors, being in nature, be that walking, running, kayaking, whatever floats your boat? 1 to 5. This is quite a simple one. How much do you like beer? I'll just leave that question there. 1 to 5. And I should have explained that 1 is the least, the lowest on the liking scale, and 5 is, yes, I absolutely love beer. The final question, how much do you like data? Big data, small data, data visualization, transactional data, data-driven decisions, data literacy, all things data. Again, 1 to 5, 1 being, yeah, can't be bothered with data, 5 being data, now you're talking my language. Excellent. Do you have your results? So, winning my friendship, some people would say it's the worst prize to win, but this isn't about, from my perspective, as your key stakeholder, this is not about adding up your scores. This is not about, I want people to get 25 out of 25 and be the most mature against this scale. It's about matching what I want to achieve from this friendship. It would be nice if you like dogs. An appreciation of Star Wars is a plus, as long as you can't out-geek me. I don't want a 5 out of 5 Star Wars person who knows much more than I do. I spend a lot of time in the hills. We should too. So that's high. Beer, yeah, it'd be nice if you like beer, but it's also nice to have someone to drive me home. But data's the crux of this. If you love data, then we're going to get along very, very well. So feel free to contact me with your results, how well you've matched. I'll analyze the responses that you send me. I'll extrapolate that out to see how many friends I should have in real life, because that's what data people do. And that's why data people don't have many friends. So, is it enough just knowing how mature or well matched to a framework you are? Well, no, it's the simple answer. You need to have a plan to improve. How do you raise your Star Wars appreciation from 1 to 3? And how do you know if that improvement is valuable to you? And that's valuable to you, not just valuable to me, and valuable to your other stakeholders. So are all of those hours that you're going to spend watching Star Wars films, could they be spent more productively? Probably. And yeah, granted, it's obvious that becoming more data savvy is valuable, not only to improve your score on the Squires-ometer, but in real business life. But is getting a dog the sensible thing to do, especially given the cost and effort it requires to keep them going, just to keep them alive and fed? So that brings me on to think about value. What is important to you? What is important for you to be measured against? And what is important for you to improve? So I've split this down into the 3 key areas. So measuring yourself against regulation is an absolute no-brainer, especially if it's a governance-based regulation like Ball 2 or Sarbanes-Oxley. We have in the UK Natasha's Law, which is all about allergens and nutrition in food, so people know if peanuts are in the food that they're eating. Or it could be an IT quality standard like ISO 27001. These are areas where the actual management of data has a direct impact on certification or compliance. And if you're weak in some of these areas, then you need to know that. You need to test yourselves against that maturity scale. And you need to plan to improve to meet those regulations. Measuring yourself against the competition. And this is often where maturity assessments come in. It's measuring yourself against a benchmark in your industry. But it's not a level playing field. Companies are starting at different points. Companies may have been investing in this for tens of years, or they may not have been investing in it at all. And as well, actually, is your success the same success as your peers and your competition? Or are you actually aiming for different things? So can you compare yourself directly with the rest of the market. So I often use examples that, yeah, there are some businesses, even some quite big ones, that you can run off spreadsheets, and they run better off spreadsheets. The flexibility and the agility that you get with spreadsheets is key. But to make that work, those organizations need a really good level of accountability and control. So their technical maturity may be very low, but their governance maturity may be very high. And that works for them. And on the flip side, there are some businesses where their mode of operation changes so infrequently, and their business rules can be completely codified and systemized. And therefore, they have very little need for operational data governance or data quality reports because they've systemized the control. So in that maturity scale, their technology is high, but the governance is low, but they are set up for themselves to be successful. Does being more mature mean that you'll achieve your business targets or achieve your strategic goals? And that's a question I ask a lot to a lot of our clients and the organizations that we work with. Do you need to be mature to achieve your business targets or achieve your strategic goals? Is it better to, beyond regulation and compliance, obviously, pick and choose what parts of the framework you need and determine how mature you need to be in each one of those, and add bits that are specifically you, add things that set you apart from the competition, add things that you want to achieve that makes you special? So that is really to develop a set of data readiness measures rather than data maturity measures. That may sound like semantics, but it's being ready to execute upon your strategy rather than measuring your maturity against others. Why prepare to run 100 meters in a straight line when you actually need to run 30 miles over mountains? So moving on to the concept of a personalized data readiness assessment. Again, notice I'm using readiness rather than maturity. So if we take the first column, what do you want to achieve? Now, you, depending where you sit in your organization, you may not be able to articulate this. You may have to speak to C-level. You may be C-level in the room. I don't know who's in the virtual room. But you may have to consult not only your business strategy papers that have been written, if they exist, but the wants and needs of your board. So, and it could be that we want to increase, say, our sales of shoes. Say you're a clothing retailer and you want to increase the sale of shoes across all of your regions. So you're a global retailer, you want shoes across all regions up, because that will cement you as the world shoe selling leader. And to put a KPI against that, as we have in that bottom box there, the KPI could be, in total, we want an increase of 20% on the global revenue from the category that is shoes. We don't really care about the mix, where it comes from, whether it's Latin America or whether it's Europe, but we want globally a 20% uplift. So that moves you on to the second column. Thinking about, right, if that's what the C-level want to achieve, how does the stuff that we're passionate about and we're interested in, we can move the needle, how does it underpin that? So you could say, well, in order to get that increase, one of the things we need is a sales report by category across all of our regions. So what do we mean by that? Well, each region has got to deliver a report that can be rolled up into a global report. But the challenge there could be that the definition of category is different in each region. They've all got their own systems. They've all got their own organizations that manage their data. They all may have different structures for their shoe data. Some may break it down into ladies and men's fashion. Some may have trainers, casual shoes, smart shoes, etc. What do we have and what can we do organizationally so to get around that challenge? So maybe you need a central forum to be in place to agree those standards. Maybe it just needs to be conversations. Maybe you want to go completely centralized and remove all the autonomy in category definition in the region. That could work for your business. Very rarely does, to be honest, but that could be how your business sees and manages change. Do we want to change local processes? Maybe not. Do we actually get around changing local processes so you don't impact the local business and add new global processes over the top to help you match and merge your categories? Do we want to change local systems? Do we want to actually put these hierarchies, this global hierarchy, into the local system? Or do we just, really with the processes, just create a global one and have the technology that maps from your local hierarchies and classification structures and categorization into your global categorization? Moving on to the how do we measure it? So we could measure the success of whatever you choose to do with the data by, for example, the number of categories in each region that are not 100% mapped to a global category, for example, whether they've been changed locally or not. So how many of the categories that they use locally are not mapped to a central definition? You could measure it by operations. So how many data definition workshops have you had, if that is how you're restructuring your organization to manage this data? These data KPIs, the things that are easy to measure, they're now intrinsically linked to the KPIs of the board. So to recap that string, you have a KPI at the top level that wants to increase sales of shoes by 20%. You only know that by doing your reporting on it. Your reporting on it is dependent on the congruent use of categorization, which you can measure at a local level and roll up to a global level. It's not easy to make these connections. We've just done one example. That C-level KPI would break into tens, if not hundreds, of lower level KPIs. And it's not easy to do, but it is critical. And it's been part of business performance theory for a very, very long time. We just have to think about it in terms of the measurables and the data and the impact that we can have. So by doing that, you're building a KPI framework, a measurement framework that's measuring your readiness to achieve your goals. So what are the benefits of doing that? Well, you take those low-level KPIs and you work out a way to move the needles on those low-level ones, in the knowledge that by making an improvement at that small level, you will ever so slightly be moving that strategic needle. With project outcomes as well, if they're aligned to the KPIs of the decision makers, it's far easier to tell a story that will get the projects that you know they will make a difference. It's obvious to you if you're working at the coalface and you want to make an improvement and you know that, yes, it's just do it. Why are we getting pushback from senior management? This is just a sensible thing to do. If that project is tied to the KPIs of the C-level, then it's a lot easier to get things signed off. And not only that, but you'll be able to articulate the impact that your project has on the business across the board and the benefits that the C-level will get. And that you can use that to gain trust in you. So the next time that you come with with a project that you want signing off, if that is your role, you may not have to push as hard because the board, the decision makers, will get increasing trust in you and increasing trust in the fact that you've done the research and you care about what they care about rather than just what you care about. So that's the benefits, some benefits to you. There can be many more, and it all depends on what your role is. So benefits to the business. So you're investing time, effort, and money in projects that actually count, not just vanity projects that yes, they may be on time and on budget, but is the outcome of those projects, or the outcome of those projects actually adding success to the business? Are they a business value creator? And to the shareholders. So if you're consistently driving forward projects that have got a data component that are adding to the success of the KPIs at board level, then you're creating a business that is truly data-driven, and it's successful, and it's valuable. And that could make you more attractive for investors, be that however you want the business to grow. Organizations always need more investment to grow. So to conclude, you've got no choice about getting old. That's out of your hands, but you can choose how mature you need to be successful. And data maturity assessments, they are only the start. You've got to define where your own finish line is, what you want to succeed in, what your targets are, so that you can make a plan to get from where you are today to that finish line. So thank you very much for your very valuable time. If you have any questions, any remarks, or just think that we could be friends, then please feel free to reach out. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of conference.